The first fine came on December 2nd, and I knew immediately that my life in Maplewood Heights, Connecticut was about to get a whole lot more complicated. I was standing in my garage, untangling the fourth string of LED lights, when my neighbor, Tom, jogged over with an envelope in his hand. He had that apologetic look people get when they are about to deliver bad news that is not their fault. "Martin, you got mail from the HOA," he said, handing it to me. "Brenda dropped it off at my place by mistake." I wiped my hands on my jeans and took the envelope. The return address confirmed it was from the Maplewood Heights Homeowners Association. I tore it open right there, expecting maybe a reminder about the annual dues or something equally mundane. Instead, I found a violation notice and a fine for $250. What the hell? I muttered, scanning the document. According to the letter, my holiday decorations violated Section 12.4 of the HOA bylaws, which prohibited decorative lighting displays before December 15th. The notice was dated November 30th, which meant someone had reported me the very same day I had started putting up my lights. Tom peered over my shoulder. $250? For what? "Apparently I put my Christmas lights up too early," I said, reading the letter again to make sure I was not missing something. "Says here I can't have them up before the 15th. That's ridiculous. Half the neighborhood already has their decorations up." He was right. As I looked down Oakwood Drive, I could see at least 6 other houses with lights strung across their porches, wrapped around trees and outlining roof lines. The Hendersons 3 doors down had a full nativity scene in their yard. The Patels across the street had their entire house outlined in multicolored LEDs. "Did they get fined too?" I asked. Tom shrugged. "I haven't heard anything. Want me to ask around?" "Yeah, would you? This doesn't make sense." After Tom left, I went inside and pulled out my copy of the HOA bylaws. My wife Rachel had insisted we keep all the paperwork when we bought the house 2 years ago, and for once, I was grateful for her organizational skills. She was visiting her sister in Boston for the week, which meant I was handling this mess alone. I flipped through the document until I found Section 12.4. Sure enough, there it was. Holiday decorations and lighting displays may be installed beginning December 15th and must be removed by January 15th. But there was a problem. I pulled out the original bylaws we had received when we purchased the property. In that version, the dates were different. December 1st through January 31st. Someone had changed the rules, and I had never received notice of the amendment. I grabbed my phone and called the HOA office. A woman answered on the 3rd ring. "Maplewood Heights HOA, this is Deborah speaking." "Hi, Deborah. This is Martin Fletcher from 247 Oakwood Drive. I just received a violation notice about my holiday lights, but I think there's been a mistake. One moment, please." I heard the clicking of a keyboard. "Yes, Mr. Fletcher. The violation was filed by our president, Patricia Morrison. Your lights were observed on November 30th, which violates our current bylaws." "That's the thing," I said. "My copy of the bylaws says December 1st is acceptable." "The bylaws were amended in September, Mr. Fletcher. All residents should have received notification via email." I never got any email about bylaw changes. More keyboard clicking. "I show the email was sent to all residents on September 12th at 9:15 a.m. "Well, I never received it. Can you resend it?" "Of course. Is the email on file still current?" She read off an email address that was indeed mine. I checked my inbox, spam folder, and trash. Nothing. Either their system had failed or the email had vanished into the digital void. "Even if I didn't get the email," I said, "half my neighbors have their lights up too. Why was I the only one who got fined?" Deborah's voice took on that practiced neutrality of someone who has answered this question before. "I cannot speak to other violations, Mr. Fletcher. I can only address your case. The fine must be paid within 30 days, or it will increase to $500. You may appeal at the next board meeting on December 18th. December 18th. That's more than 2 weeks away. Yes, sir. Meetings are held on the third Tuesday of each month." I thanked her and hung up, already feeling the anger building in my chest. Something about this whole situation felt targeted. I had moved to Maplewood Heights because it seemed like a quiet, friendly community. The HOA had appeared reasonable during our home buying process. But now, I was getting fined for something that half the neighborhood was doing without consequence. I decided to do what any rational person would do: investigate. Over the next 3 days, I walked through the neighborhood with a notebook, documenting every house with holiday decorations. Out of the 87 homes in Maplewood Heights, 43 had some form of lights or decorations up. I took photographs, noted addresses, and even checked the dates on their Ring doorbell footage when I could see the timestamps. The Hendersons had put their nativity scene up on November 28th. The Patels had their lights up on November 26th, the day after Thanksgiving. Yet none of them had received violation notices. On December 5th, I received a second notice. This one informed me that since my lights remained up after the initial violation, I was now being fined an additional $500, and if they were not removed immediately, I would face a lien on my property. That was when I knew this was personal. I called Tom again and asked if he had learned anything. He came over that evening with his wife, Sandra, and they both looked uncomfortable. "Okay, so I asked around," Tom said as we sat in my living room. "Nobody else got fined, but I heard something interesting from the Jacobsons." "What?" Sandra spoke up. "Patricia Morrison, the HOA president. Apparently she's still angry about the community center vote." I remembered that vote. 6 months ago, the HOA had proposed building a new community center on a plot of land at the back of the neighborhood. It would have cost each homeowner about $8,000 in special assessments, and the vote had been close. I had been one of the deciding votes against it. "You think she's retaliating against everyone who voted no?" I asked. Tom nodded. "That's the rumor. But you're the first one she's gone after publicly. The Jacobsons voted no too, and they haven't been fined." "Maybe she's starting with me to set an example," I said. "Test the waters, see if she can get away with it." "What are you going to do?" Sandra asked. "Good question." I could pay the fine and take down my lights, but that felt like giving in to a bully. I could wait for the board meeting and appeal, but that was still almost 2 weeks away, and I doubted Patricia would suddenly develop a conscience. Then I remembered something. When we had purchased our house, the previous owner had mentioned that the property had a unique feature. The lot at 247 Oakwood Drive was one of the original parcels when Maplewood Heights was developed back in 1987. And because of some quirk in the original planning, the electrical easement that powered the community center's main building ran directly through my backyard. I had never thought much about it. The easement was just a strip of land about 10 feet wide where I was not supposed to build anything permanent. There was a utility box back there, locked and mostly forgotten behind my shed. But now, an idea was forming. After Tom and Sandra left, I went down to my basement and dug through the boxes of paperwork from our home purchase. I found what I was looking for: the property survey and easement agreement. According to the documents, while the electrical company had the right to access the easement for maintenance, I, as the property owner, had certain rights too. Specifically, I could request modifications or temporary shutdowns with proper notice for things like landscaping or construction. It was a long shot, but I decided to dig deeper. I called my real estate attorney, Jeffrey Stone, the next morning. "Martin, good to hear from you," Jeff said. "How's the new house?" "Actually, that's why I'm calling. I need some advice about an easement on my property." I explained the situation with the HOA, the fines, and the electrical easement. Jeff listened without interrupting, which I appreciated about him. "Interesting," he said when I finished. "So you're thinking about exercising your rights under the easement agreement to cause problems for the HOA?" "I'm thinking about understanding my options," I corrected. "Right. Well, technically, you can request a temporary shutdown for legitimate property maintenance. You'd need to file the request with the utility company and give proper notice to affected parties. Usually that's 72 hours for non-emergency work. And the community center would lose power. If that's what's on that line, yes. But Martin, you need to be careful here. If they can prove you're doing it in bad faith or as retaliation, you could open yourself up to legal action." "What if I actually need to do work back there? I've been thinking about putting in a new fence." That was not entirely untrue. Rachel and I had discussed fencing in the backyard at some point, though we had not made any concrete plans. "Then you'd be within your rights," Jeff said. "But document everything. Make sure you have legitimate reasons, get proper permits, and follow all the procedures to the letter." We talked for another 20 minutes about the specifics. By the time I hung up, I had a plan. First, I applied for a fence permit with the town of Maplewood. That took 2 days and $150, but I got it approved. Then, I contacted 3 fencing companies and got quotes for installing a 6-foot privacy fence along my back property line. I chose the one that could start work the soonest, which happened to be December 12th. Next, I contacted the electric company and filled out the proper forms to request a temporary power shutdown to the easement area during the fence installation. According to the utility company representative I spoke with, they would need to shut down the entire line, which would affect the community center. The shutdown could last up to 4 days, depending on the complexity of the work. I submitted the request on December 8th, providing the required 72-hour notice. The shutdown was scheduled for December 11th at 8 a.m. Then I sent a formal letter to the HOA, informing them of the upcoming work and power shutdown. I kept it professional and cited all the relevant sections of the easement agreement. I sent it via certified mail and email, with copies to every board member I could identify. On December 9th, my phone started ringing. The first call was from Deborah at the HOA office. "Mr. Fletcher, we received your notice about the power shutdown. Is there any way to postpone this? We have several events scheduled at the community center next week." "I'm sorry, but the fencing company's schedule is tight, and I need to get this done before winter weather makes it impossible," I said. "I've followed all the proper procedures and given notice as required. But Mr. Fletcher, this will affect the entire community center. Can't you work around the easement? The easement runs right where my fence needs to go. According to my contractor, we need the power off for safety reasons while we work near the utility box." Deborah sighed. "I'll need to inform the board." The second call came an hour later. It was Patricia Morrison herself. "Mr. Fletcher, this is Patricia Morrison, president of the Maplewood Heights HOA." Her voice was sharp, authoritative, the kind of voice used to getting its way. "I understand you're planning to shut down power to our community center." "I'm planning to install a fence, Mrs. Morrison. The power shutdown is a necessary safety precaution. This is completely unreasonable. We have a yoga class scheduled for Monday morning, a book club Tuesday evening, and the community holiday party on Saturday. You cannot disrupt all of that for a fence. I've given proper notice according to the easement agreement, I said calmly. Everything I'm doing is legal and by the book. This is retaliation for the violation notices, isn't it? I had been waiting for that accusation. Mrs. Morrison, I'm simply exercising my property rights. If you believe I'm doing something improper, you're welcome to consult your attorney, but I've checked with mine and everything is in order. There was a long pause. Those fines are legitimate, Mr. Fletcher. You violated clearly stated bylaws. Bylaws that were changed without proper notice to all residents, I countered. And I've documented 43 other homes currently in violation that haven't been fined. If we're going to discuss what's legitimate, we should probably start there. Another pause. I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate being singled out for enforcement while others are ignored. But here we are. She hung up without another word. The third call came from a board member named Kevin Walsh. He was friendlier than Patricia, more diplomatic. Martin, I think we got off on the wrong foot here, he said. I've looked into your situation and I agree it seems like you were unfairly targeted. What if we waived the fines and you postponed the fence work? What about the other houses with decorations up? I asked. We'll send them courtesy notices instead of fines. Fresh start for everyone. It was tempting, but something made me hesitate. Kevin, I appreciate the offer, but I don't think it's enough. Patricia has been using the HOA as a personal weapon, and she's going to keep doing it unless something changes. What do you want, Martin? I want a formal apology from Patricia and the board for the unfair enforcement. I want confirmation in writing that the bylaws will be applied equally to everyone, and I want assurance that there won't be any retaliation for me exercising my legal rights. That's a lot to ask. Is it? I'm just asking to be treated fairly. Kevin said he would talk to the board and get back to me. December 11th arrived, and so did the electric company. At exactly 8 a.m., a technician named Mike showed up and confirmed the shutdown. This is going to kill power to the whole South Line, he said. You sure you need this? Positive, I said. My contractor says it's a safety issue. Mike shrugged and made the call. 10 minutes later, the community center went dark. My fence installers arrived at 9. They were a crew of 3 guys led by a foreman named Rodriguez who took one look at my backyard and said, "This is going to take maybe 2 days, tops. You sure you need 4 days of shutdown? Let's just take our time and do it right," I said. No rush. Rodriguez gave me a knowing look but did not argue. Your money, boss. By noon, my phone was blowing up. I ignored most of the calls, but I did answer when Tom called. Dude, the neighborhood is losing its mind, he said, laughing. Patricia's been going door to door trying to get people to complain about you. Is it working? Not really. Most people think it's hilarious. The Hendersons asked if you need any help with your fence. I could not help but smile. That evening I got an email from Kevin Walsh. The board wanted to meet with me privately the next morning to discuss a resolution. I agreed, curious to see what they would offer. The meeting was at Patricia's house, which should have been my first warning sign. She lived in one of the larger homes in Maplewood Heights, a colonial-style place with perfect landscaping and a BMW in the driveway. When I arrived at 9 a.m., Kevin met me at the door. Thanks for coming, Martin. Let's keep this civil, okay? Inside, the board was assembled around Patricia's dining room table. Besides Patricia and Kevin, there was Margaret Chen, the secretary, and Douglas Palmer, the treasurer. They all had coffee except for me. Nobody offered. Patricia started. Mr. Fletcher, this power shutdown is causing significant problems for our community. We need the center operational. Then we need to resolve the underlying issues, I said. We've already offered to waive your fines, Kevin said, and I've asked for more than that. Margaret spoke up. She was a thin woman in her 60s with glasses that she kept adjusting nervously. "What exactly do you want from us, Mr. Fletcher?" I had thought about this carefully. First, a written apology from the board acknowledging that enforcement of the decoration bylaws was applied unfairly. Second, a commitment to equal enforcement going forward with oversight to prevent selective targeting. Third, I want Patricia to resign as president. The room went silent. Patricia's face turned red. "Absolutely not. I've been president for 4 years. I've done nothing wrong." "You've used your position to retaliate against people who disagreed with you," I said. "The community center vote was 6 months ago and you're still angry about it. That's not leadership, that's a grudge. You have no proof of that." I pulled out my phone and opened the documentation I had compiled. I have proof that 43 houses currently have decorations up, some since November 26th. Only I received a fine. I also have emails from 3 other homeowners who voted against the community center expansion and have since received various violation notices for minor issues. Susan Yamamoto got cited for her mailbox being the wrong shade of black. The Jacobsons were fined because their trash cans were visible from the street for 15 minutes on a non-collection day. Douglas Palmer, who had been silent until now, leaned forward. "Can I see that documentation?" I handed him my phone. He scrolled through the photos and notes, his expression growing more troubled. "Patricia, did you personally file all these violations?" he asked. "I filed legitimate violations as I observed them," Patricia said. "That's my job as president." "Your job is to serve the community fairly," Kevin said. "This looks bad, Patricia. I'm not resigning." "Then the power stays off," I said simply. "My fence installation will continue as scheduled." Patricia stood up. "You can't blackmail the HOA." "I'm not blackmailing anyone. I'm installing a fence on my property, which is my right. If the board wants to negotiate a delay, I'm open to reasonable terms." Margaret adjusted her glasses again. "Perhaps we should vote on Martin's requests. If the board agrees to the apology and enforcement changes, would you be willing to restore power, Martin?" "If Patricia resigns, yes." "I'm not resigning," Patricia repeated. Kevin sighed. "Patricia, maybe you should step down voluntarily. This situation has gotten out of hand." "Because he's blackmailing us. Because you singled him out for a violation that half the neighborhood is committing," Douglas said quietly. "I've been treasurer for 2 years, and I've watched you use violation fines to push your personal agenda. I should have said something earlier." Patricia looked around the table, seeing that she was losing support. "You're all making a terrible mistake. He's manipulating you." "I'm enforcing my property rights," I corrected. "Just like you were supposedly enforcing the bylaws. The difference is I'm doing it legally and transparently." The vote was 3-1, with Patricia as the only dissenting vote. The board agreed to issue a written apology, implement oversight for violation enforcement, and accept Patricia's resignation. Patricia, however, refused to resign voluntarily. "Then we'll have to call an emergency HOA meeting and vote you out," Kevin said. "The bylaws allow for removal of board members with a 2/3 vote of the membership." Patricia's face was now purple. "Fine. Call your meeting. But the power stays off until then, and you'll all see what a mistake this is." I left the meeting feeling both satisfied and uneasy. I had won the battle, but Patricia was not done fighting. The emergency HOA meeting was scheduled for December 14th, which meant the community center would be without power for 3 full days. My fence installation was actually finished on December 12th, but I told the electric company I needed the shutdown extended for additional landscaping work. On December 13th, things escalated. I was at work, managing my software consulting business from my home office when Rachel called. She had cut her trip short and come home a day early. "Martin, what the hell is going on?" she said when I answered. "I just got a call from Patricia Morrison saying you've hijacked the neighborhood's power supply." I explained everything, from the original fine to the board meeting. Rachel listened, and I could not tell if she was angry or amused. "So you're holding the community center hostage until Patricia resigns," she said when I finished. "I'm not holding anything hostage. I'm exercising my legal rights." "Martin." "Okay, yes, I'm applying pressure, but she started this by singling me out for a fine when everyone else gets a pass." Rachel sighed. "This is so typical of you. Someone pushes, you push back twice as hard." "Is that a bad thing?" "Not always, but it can be. What's your end game here?" I had not really thought about it beyond forcing Patricia out. "I want the HOA to be fair. I want people to follow the rules, but I want the rules applied equally." "And you think getting Patricia to resign will fix that?" "It's a start." The emergency meeting was held in Patricia's backyard since the community center still had no power. About 60 homeowners showed up, which was a good turnout for Maplewood Heights. Tom and Sandra saved me a seat in the back. Kevin Walsh called the meeting to order and explained the situation. He presented the documentation I had provided, showing the selective enforcement of violations. Then he proposed a vote to remove Patricia as president and install Margaret Chen as interim president until the next regular election. Patricia was given a chance to defend herself. "What we're seeing here is a hostile takeover by a disgruntled homeowner," she said, standing before the assembled crowd. "Martin Fletcher is angry because he was caught breaking the rules, and now he's using a legal technicality to punish the entire community. If you vote to remove me, you're rewarding his bullying behavior." It was a good speech, I had to admit. A few people nodded in agreement, then Susan Yamamoto stood up. "I'd like to speak." Kevin nodded. "Go ahead, Susan." "I voted against the community center expansion," Susan said. 2 weeks later, I got a violation notice for my mailbox. Patricia claimed it was the wrong color, even though it's the same mailbox that's been there for 8 years. I had to repaint it and pay a $200 fine. When I asked why other mailboxes weren't being cited, I was told mine was particularly noticeable. Another homeowner stood. "I'm David Jacobson. Same thing happened to me. Violation for visible trash cans. I've lived here 12 years and never had a problem before I voted against the expansion." More hands went up. It turned out I was not the only one Patricia had targeted. Over the next 20 minutes, 7 different homeowners shared similar stories. The pattern was clear. Vote against Patricia's projects, get fined for minor violations. When the speaking ended, Kevin called for the vote. It was not even close. 48 votes for removal, 9 against, 3 abstentions. Patricia Morrison was out as HOA president. She left the meeting without saying another word, her husband trailing behind her looking embarrassed. Margaret Chen took over as interim president and immediately made a motion to issue a formal apology to all homeowners who had been unfairly targeted. The motion passed unanimously. Then she turned to me. "Martin, thank you for bringing this to our attention. However, I do need to ask when the community center will have power restored." "I'll call the electric company first thing tomorrow morning," I said. "The fence is done, so there's no reason to keep it off. And your Christmas lights, they'll stay up if that's okay." Margaret smiled. "Under the original bylaws, December 1st is perfectly acceptable. I'll be sending out a notice tomorrow clarifying the decoration rules. I think we had some confusion about the dates." That got a laugh from the crowd. The meeting ended on a surprisingly positive note. Several people came up to shake my hand and thank me for standing up to Patricia. The Hendersons invited Rachel and me over for dinner. Tom clapped me on the back and said, "That was the most entertaining HOA meeting I've ever attended." But not everything was resolved. On December 15th, I called the electric company and requested the power be restored. The technician, Mike, came out that afternoon and flipped the switches. The community center lit up, and I figured that was the end of it. I was wrong. On December 17th, I received a certified letter from a law firm in Hartford. Patricia Morrison was suing me personally for damages related to the power shutdown. She claimed I had caused the cancellation of paid events at the community center, resulting in financial losses and damage to the HOA's reputation. She was seeking $25,000 in damages. I called Jeff Stone immediately. "I was wondering when this would happen," Jeff said after I read him the letter. "Patricia strikes me as the litigious type. Can she win?" "Unlikely, but she can make your life difficult for a while. You did everything by the book, right? Proper permits, proper notice, legitimate reason for the work. Yes to all of that. Then we'll file a motion to dismiss. This is a frivolous suit, but we'll need to respond. I'll draft something and send it over for your review." The lawsuit added a dark cloud over what should have been a satisfying resolution. Rachel was less amused now, worried about legal fees and the stress of being sued. "Maybe you should have just paid the fine," she said one evening as we sat in our living room, Christmas lights twinkling outside. "And let her get away with abusing her power. It was $250, Martin. Now we're looking at thousands in legal fees." She had a point, but I could not bring myself to regret my actions. Some things are worth fighting for, like Christmas lights, like being treated fairly. Rachel softened. "I know, I just worry about you sometimes. You have this thing where you can't let injustice slide even when it would be easier." "Is that bad?" "No, it's one of the reasons I married you, but it's also exhausting." Jeff filed the motion to dismiss on December 22nd. Patricia's attorney filed a response, and we were scheduled for a preliminary hearing on January 8th. In the meantime, the holidays proceeded. The neighborhood looked beautiful with all the lights and decorations. Margaret Chen, in her role as interim president, organized a voluntary decoration contest with prizes for different categories. It was exactly the kind of community-building activity that an HOA should be doing on Christmas Eve. Rachel and I hosted a small party. Tom and Sandra came, along with the Hendersons, the Yamamoto family, and a few other neighbors. We drank eggnog, exchanged gifts, and generally enjoyed ourselves. Around 9 p.m., there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find Patricia Morrison standing on my porch. "Can we talk?" she asked. Rachel appeared beside me, protective. "Patricia, this probably isn't the best time. I know, but I need to say something, and I'd rather do it in person than through lawyers." I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What do you want to say?" Patricia looked different. Smaller somehow, less imposing. "I'm dropping the lawsuit." I had not expected that. "Why?" "Because my husband pointed out that I'm being ridiculous, and my daughter, who's in law school, told me I have no case and I'm just wasting money and making myself look worse." "Okay. I'm also sorry." Not the fake apology the board issued, but really sorry. "You were right about the enforcement. I was angry about the community center vote, and I took it out on people who disagreed with me. That was wrong." I studied her face, trying to gauge if this was genuine. She looked tired and older than she had at the emergency meeting. "Why the community center?" I asked. "Why was that so important to you?" Patricia sighed. "My son has special needs. He's 17 and needs structure, activities, programs. I thought a community center would provide that." When the vote failed, I felt like the neighborhood was rejecting him. That's not what the vote was about. I know that now, but at the time it felt personal, so I made it personal, which was stupid and petty and everything you accused me of. We stood in silence for a moment. Christmas lights twinkled around us, and I could hear laughter from inside my house. I accept your apology, I said finally, and I'm sorry about your son. If there's anything the community can do to help, you should talk to Margaret. She's good at bringing people together. Patricia nodded. Thank you, and I mean it about the lawsuit. I'll have my attorney file the dismissal tomorrow. She turned to leave, then paused. Your lights look nice, by the way. After she left, I went back inside. Rachel raised her eyebrows in question. She apologized, I said. And she's dropping the lawsuit. Seriously, seriously. Tom overheard and raised his glass. To Martin Fletcher, the man who took on the HOA and won. Everyone laughed and drank, and the party continued into the night. The preliminary hearing on January 8th was canceled due to Patricia's dismissal of the lawsuit. Jeff sent me a final bill for his services, which came to $1,200. Not cheap, but better than going through a full trial. Life in Maplewood Heights settled into a new normal. Margaret Chen proved to be a fair and effective president. She implemented a transparent violation reporting system where all citations were logged and published monthly, preventing selective enforcement. She also started a committee to review and update the bylaws, ensuring residents had input on rule changes. The decoration rules were formally amended back to the original December 1st to January 31st window, with a note that early or late decorations would be handled with courtesy reminders rather than immediate fines. Patricia Morrison kept a low profile. I would see her occasionally at neighborhood events, and we would nod to each other politely. Her son, whose name was Tyler, started attending programs at the local IMCA after several neighbors, myself included, pitched in to sponsor his membership. In February, Margaret approached me about joining the HOA board. We need people who aren't afraid to stand up for what's right, she said. I declined. I'm more of a troublemaker than a board member, but I'll keep an eye on things and speak up when needed. That works too, she said with a smile. Rachel and I settled into our house, our neighborhood, our life. The fence in the backyard turned out to be a good addition. We got a dog in March, a golden retriever named Biscuit, and the fence gave him a safe place to run. On December 1st of the following year, I was the first person in the neighborhood to put up Christmas lights. I half expected some kind of reaction, but instead, I got text messages from neighbors saying things like "looking good" and "beat me to it this year." Tom came over that evening with a beer and watched me string lights across the porch. You know, you could have avoided that whole mess last year if you had just waited 2 weeks. True, I said, taking the beer. But then we would still have Patricia abusing her power, and the HOA would still be a mess. So it was all part of your master plan. Not exactly. But sometimes you have to break a few eggs. You didn't break eggs, man. You shut down the power to the entire community center. I grinned. Yeah, I did. Would you do it again? I thought about it. The stress, the lawsuit threat, the conflict with neighbors, but also the changes that came from it, the fairer system, the better leadership. In a heartbeat, I said. Tom laughed and clinked his beer against mine. That's what I thought. As winter settled over Maplewood Heights, Connecticut, the neighborhood glowed with holiday lights. Families gathered, kids played in the snow, and the community center hosted events that brought people together rather than driving them apart. And my lights, the ones that started it all, shone bright from December 1st all the way through January 31st, a reminder that sometimes standing up for yourself can change everything. The following spring, Margaret announced she would run for president in the regular election. She won with 80% of the vote. Patricia Morrison attended the meeting and voted for her. In her acceptance speech, Margaret said something that stuck with me. An HOA should serve its community, not rule it. We're neighbors first, and our job is to make this a better place to live for everyone. It was a simple idea, but it made all the difference. Looking back, I realized the whole situation taught me something important. It's easy to complain about injustice, but it takes courage to actually do something about it. Yes, I cut power to the community center. Yes, I forced a confrontation that could have gone badly. But in doing so, I helped create change that benefited everyone. Rachel still thinks I'm too stubborn for my own good, and she's probably right. But she also admits that the neighborhood is better now than it was before the whole lights incident. As for Patricia, I ran into her at the grocery store a few months after the election. We ended up in the same checkout line, and she struck up a conversation. "Tyler's doing really well at the IMCA," she said. "He's made friends, and he's even talking about joining their basketball league." "That's great," I said, and I meant it. "Thank you for helping with the membership." "You didn't have to do that after everything. We're neighbors," I said. "That's what neighbors do." She smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her face. "I was a terrible HOA president, wasn't I? You cared about the community. You just lost sight of what that meant." "That's diplomatic of you. I have my moments." We parted on good terms, and I realized that holding a grudge would have been as bad as what Patricia had done. People make mistakes. What matters is whether they learn from them. The holidays came around again, and this time there was no drama about lights or decorations. The neighborhood sparkled with creativity and color. The Hendersons expanded their nativity scene. The Patels added a dancing Santa to their display. And I, for the second year in a row, put my lights up on December 1st without incident. During the neighborhood holiday party at the community center, powered by the electrical line that ran through my backyard, Margaret pulled me aside. "I never properly thanked you for what you did last year," she said. "I was just defending myself. You did more than that. You exposed a problem that needed fixing. A lot of people knew Patricia was abusing her power, but nobody wanted to be the one to call her out. You did that." "By being stubborn and possibly crazy," Margaret laughed. "Sometimes that's what it takes. The world needs people who won't back down when they're right." She raised her glass. "To Martin Fletcher, the man who brought light back to Maplewood Heights." "That's terrible," I said, laughing. "I know. I've been waiting all night to use it." We drank, and I looked around the room at my neighbors, my friends, my community. It had been a long road from that first violation notice to this moment, but it was worth it. Later that night, as Rachel and I drove home through streets lined with decorated houses, she reached over and squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you," she said, "even though you're impossible sometimes." "Only sometimes." "Okay, most of the time, but it's usually for good reasons." We pulled into our driveway, and I looked at our house with its carefully strung lights, each one representing a small victory over arbitrary rules and unfair enforcement. "You think we'll ever have another HOA crisis?" Rachel asked. "Probably not. Margaret's doing a great job, and the new oversight systems should prevent the kind of abuse Patricia engaged in. But if there is another crisis," I thought about it, "then I'll deal with it, hopefully without cutting anyone's power this time." "Hopefully," Rachel agreed. I don't think my heart could take another lawsuit. We went inside, and Biscuit greeted us with his usual enthusiasm. Life was good. The neighborhood was peaceful, and my Christmas lights would stay up until January 31st, exactly as the bylaws allowed. In the end, the story of how I cut power to the Maplewood Heights Community Center became legendary in our neighborhood. New residents would hear about it and look at me with a mixture of respect and wariness. I became the guy who stood up to the HOA and won, which was both flattering and slightly embarrassing. But more importantly, it became a reminder that rules need to be fair and applied equally, that leaders serve their communities rather than ruling them, and that sometimes the most effective way to create change is to stand your ground and refuse to back down. I never set out to be a neighborhood activist or an HOA rebel. I just wanted to put up my Christmas lights and enjoy the holidays. But when I was singled out and fined unfairly, I had a choice: accept it or fight back. I chose to fight, and in doing so, I made Maplewood Heights a better place to live. As I write this, 2 years after the incident, my Christmas lights are up again. It's December 2nd, well within the approved window, and the neighborhood looks beautiful. Margaret is still president, doing an excellent job. Patricia Morrison volunteers at the community center and has become an advocate for special needs families in the area. And me, I'm just a guy who lives at 247 Oakwood Drive, with a wife I love, a dog who thinks I'm amazing, and neighbors who know that if something's not right, I'll probably do something about it. The electrical easement in my backyard still runs under the community center, a reminder of the power I once wielded and the responsibility that came with it. I hope I never have to use it again, but if I do, I will. Because some principles are worth fighting for, even if the battlefield is a homeowners association in suburban Connecticut, and the weapon is an electrical shutdown. The lights continue to shine, both literally and metaphorically, proving that one person standing up for what's right can illuminate an entire community.